Greetings, M Squared here. Today we are going to talk about multiplying radical expressions. So there's a couple things that you want to know about multiplying. If you have the square root of a number times the square root of a number, it's the same thing as the square root of the product of those two things. So whatever was inside, as long as they're both inside, you can multiply them together. If you have coefficients, that means numbers on the outside, then the rule is outside times outside, and it stays outside, inside times inside, and it stays inside. And then, of course, we would use our simplifying rules for no perfect squares factors under the radical. So we still use the simplifying rule. So let's go ahead and get started. We'll try this one first. So I noticed that there are coefficients out front, so I know that 4 times 3 is 12. And then I can multiply what's inside. So 3 times 2 is 6. And x cubed times x to the x squared, remember when you're multiplying you add exponents. So this is what I have. And then I have to make sure it's simplified, meaning no perfect square factors. Well, I can see up here that inside there was a 2 and a 3. There aren't two 2's, there aren't two 3's. So 6 is simplified. But x to the 5th, I had a bunch of x's going on, so I need to look and split that up. Remember, we split it up to x to the 4th times x, and then we can take the square root of x to the 4th. The square root of x to the 4th is x squared, so that comes out, and then I'm just left with 6x. So my final simplified version after multiplying, this is the multiplied expression, then this is the simplified. We always want to simplify afterwards. Is this? Right. So here we can multiply what's on the outside, so 2x and x multiply together to get 2x squared. Then I'm going to multiply what's on the inside. I have 2 times 8, which is 16. X to the 5th times x is x to the 6th. So then I see, can I take the square root of 16? If you don't know that the square root of 16 is 4, you could use your birthday cake method again. Remember, that was the previous video. So I know that the square root of 16 is 4, and I know that the square root of x to the 6th, because that's even, is just going to be x cubed, because x cubed times x cubed equals x to the 6th. So the square root of x cubed is x to the 6th is x cubed. So I don't have any square root anymore. This actually completely simplified, so I no longer have any radical signs. And so I just need to multiply by what's left. So 2 times 4 is 8. X squared times x cubed is x to the 5th. So that would be what I get after I multiply those two expressions. Okay, over here, outside times outside. There's only one thing outside, so I'm going to put it outside. 7 times 10, and sometimes I just look, oh, that's 2 times 5. There's not going to be any perfect squares because there's not 2 of any factor. So I just know that it's 70, and I can't simplify that. Sometimes I like to know that before I write it down, because if I can simplify it before, if I know before, then I would write it differently. And x to the 7th times x is just x to the 8th. Well, I can simplify this because that's a perfect square, because x to the 4th times x to the 4th equals x to the 8th. So I know that the square root of that is x to the 4th, and I know that the 70 would stay inside because I could not simplify it, and so that is the simplified version. Okay, a couple more. So only thing on the outside is 3, and then I look at my 18 and 2. So you can do it a couple ways. You can look at that and say, oh, that's 2 times 9. Oh, the square root of 9 is 3. Oh, there's 2 2's, so that's going to be the square root of 4. You can do it that way. Or you can actually multiply 2 times 18 and get 36, and x cubed and x to the 5th is going to be x to the 8th. Because remember, you add the exponents when you're multiplying. And now I can simplify this. And this whole thing will simplify because the square root of 36 is 6, and the square root of x to the 8th is x to the 4th. So I end up with 18 x to the 4th, no square root, because everything was a perfect square. All right, here we go. So outside times outside, 12. Inside times inside. So I see a 2 and a 2 times 5 in my 10. What I notice that there's 2 2's. So I change my 20 to 4 times 5. It's still 20, but now I see the perfect square there. And I'm going to take my x to the 5th times x squared. I know it's x to the 7th, but I'm going to change it to x to the 6th times x. Still x to the 7th, but now I can see which ones I can take the perfect square of. So I'm going to take the square root of 4, which is 2. That gets me a 24 when I bring it out. The 5 is going to stay in. The square root of x to the 6th is x cubed. and the x is going to stay in. So that becomes my simplified product of those two things. So that's a little bit on how to multiply radical expressions. Remember, it's outside times outside, inside times inside, and then you have to make sure that it's simplified. What's the radicand is simplified. Remember, the radicand is the number or expression underneath the radical sign. Good luck with that. M squared signing out.